is filled with reports about violence, murder, sex, and drugs, but there are other stories left untold. They are about men and women who give their time, energy, dreams, and even their lives to make San Francisco a better place. They are Everybody's Angels.
Hi, I'm Pari Livermore, and this is Everybody's Angels. Today we'll be talking about some of the benefits of being a senior citizen. And if you're too young to be old and too old to be young, we have a special guest who wants to talk to you. And we'll also be meeting a man who retired from his job 4 years ago, but has stayed on to work for free. Our first guest is Jean Taylor. Jean is a volunteer for New Beginnings, and when she walks in the door, all faces light up because she recently raised over $2 million for their new building. Jean, we'd like to welcome you to the show, and we're excited to hear about your new building. But first, please tell us about your volunteer work for Senior Access.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, and especially because I like to espouse the activities that I'm involved with. Senior Access is the primary caregiver in Marin County for frail and elderly, and for providing respite for their caregivers. Now, when I say frail and elderly, you don't have to be elderly to be frail. So we have all adults 18 and over who are in need of assistance to remain independent.
And where are your centers?
We have 3. One is in San Anselmo, a second one in Novato, and those 2 provide daycare for the frail and the elderly who would ordinarily need help in their home, but by using bus transfers and by having special organization can come out and spend a full day in activities. The third one is in Corte Madera, and it's the only center in Marin for Alzheimer's victors.
Well, this is sort of like almost a daycare center then for the
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like providing daycare, except it's for our seniors.
And what are some of the services that you provide?
Well, we have a full nursing staff at all 3 of the centers. There is a circulating occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech therapist. We have activities coordinators. We have special guest lecturers. We have musicians who come in on a regular basis.
So it's really not just providing babysitting.
Oh, not at all.
People are really learning and
Correct.
experiencing things with one another, enjoying each other?
That's correct. In fact, we have a wonderful art program. And at the art program just this last week, the participants were asked to do a self-portrait. This is done by a woman who has dementia. She's in her mid-80s, and she sees herself as a glamorous, roaring 20s flapper girl. And as you may know, people who suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia have better long-term memory than short-term, so she probably remembers when she was a glamorous flapper.
Well, it's so nice to see that's actually how she sees herself.
That's actually how she sees herself.
And you have another one.
I have a second one. And this is done by a gentleman who is 84 years old. He's a Russian immigrant, and he has 3/4 paralysis in his body due to strokes. And when asked to do a self-portrait, he sees himself as a cowboy kicking up his heels.
You know, what's wonderful about that is those are 2 things that you would not expect. Both those people that you described,
Right.
You would not expect that to be their self-portrait.
And it's just wonderful because we view ourselves so differently sometimes than the body that we're trapped in.
Well, these are wonderful programs for the frail and elderly.
Right.
But you were telling me about something that happened to you that was really a personal experience. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. Approximately 5 years after I became involved as a volunteer, I was in the position of taking care of my father for a 4-month period. And because I was working, I needed to place him somewhere where he could have help. And I thought he would be reluctant, and he was, to go, but he did acquiesce because he knew I needed to complete my work. He was pretty cantankerous most of the time at home and found what I fixed wasn't to his liking, so I was prepared for all kinds of horror stories when I picked him up. And I picked him up, and he had the greatest smile on his face, and he said, "Oh, that lunch, it was terrific, and they sang songs I forgot about." So he was just in heaven, and he always was ready to go when I told him we were going, and he insisted that I pick him up 7 minutes before anybody else, because it was just like wanting to be one of the first kids out of school.
That's cute. But isn't it fabulous that Senior Access has come up with such a wonderful program.
It is. You know, in Marin County alone, we have 42% of our population is over 65 and living alone.
Wow.
So, in addition to the centers, we also provide a home care service and a managed care service, so that if you are an elderly person living at home and need assistance either in bathing or getting your groceries, we can pair you up with a qualified person to come in and help you do that, and somebody that we have checked out. And in case management, will come into the home and help assess what you need.
That's wonderful. Now that is what you're doing for Senior Access,
That's
but you're
correct.
also working for New Beginnings.
You're
and
right.
you raised all that money for their new building.
Within 10 months.
Wow. Well,
Yes.
tell us about New Beginnings.
New Beginnings is an organization that was funded by a group of volunteers in Marin County to help form a special group that would raise funds to help provide permanent solutions to homelessness. And when we first went out into the community, everybody looked askance and said, I don't think you're going to get much response.
But you did something really unique, and
We
please
did.
tell us about it.
A group of 4 of us put our heads together and decided that what we needed to do was to educate the public as to what the problems were and what the possible solutions were. So we decided we should approach the local independent journal. And I called a friend that is only a staff worker and said, could you please put me in touch with the editor? And after, she said, well, don't call until I call you back and say whether it's all right or not. And she did call back and said they seemed interested. So we were given a time to arrive and said we were only given 20 minutes. And so we spent 4 days prior to those 20 minutes planning every second of those 20 minutes, who was going to say what and which aspect we were going to cover. And when we walked out of the meeting, we had been there an hour and a half.
Wow.
So they liked what we were presenting.
But also, it was very successful. This campaign was raising over $2 million.
That's correct.
And I think a lot of people don't really, they don't know how, or they're afraid to do it. But do you think you were successful in your campaign because you really had organized ahead of time what you were going to say, or why do you think
It's
you were
the key.
successful? It's the key.
First of all, you have to have the passion for the project you're involved with. And you need to have the confidence that you can do the work. And then you have to be highly organized.
Well, we want to thank you very much for all of those things. And we want to thank you very much for being so inspirational
Well,
in the
thank
community,
you.
Jean.
Yeah.
You've done so many wonderful things. And I know recently you were a recipient of the Points of Light Award.
I was so grateful. Yes, thank you.
And we want to thank you for being on our show today. And we're going to present you with our gold angel pin
Oh,
for
how
the work
lovely.
you've done.
Thank you.